You're listening to the Wise Women Podcast, Season 2, Episode 27. I'm your host, Alisha Wilford, founder of Yoke and Abundance, a creative leadership coaching business. This podcast is designed to inspire by introducing you to creative women living abundantly. I hope you'll delight in this conversation with Jodee as much as I have. Have you ever been at a crossroads? What would it feel like to have a playbook to make your big life decisions? Have you ever craved real, connected community? What would it feel like to be surrounded by supportive women who have nothing but your best interest at heart? Have you ever needed to get clear on what you want? What is it costing you to not have the clarity you need? Have you ever felt like you know what you want, but you're not sure how to get there? What is staying stuck costing you and your relationships? If these questions made you pause and think, In the Company of Women is probably for you. In this 6-week online course, you'll get community, coaching, clarity, and a roadmap to accomplish your dreams and desires. But don't just take my word for it. Victoria Brownlee, who was on our very first podcast, episode 1, and on our goal-getting episode, number 24, had this to say. She said, "We left there with this level of connection that made you feel like you could go out and accomplish anything, and the momentum was sustainable because you knew you had this team of people behind you. Every time we came to a session, it was a risk-free environment to support each other, so you shared exactly what was in your heart, and you shared your story, and it was accepted. Alisha opened us all up to ourselves in a completely different way." If that sounds like the community that you want to connect with, join us for this special 6-week course that begins this week on Wednesday, February 20th at 7:30. To reserve your spot, visit the Yoke and Abundance website and go to our events and workshops page. That's www.yokeandabundance.com. A note about today's episode, this one contains a teeny tiny bit of adult language, so if cursing isn't your thing or if you've got a little one around, skip this one. Today's interview is with my friend Jodee Ruppel, recently awarded one of Greensboro's 40 under 40 leaders. She has her own business, 5x5 Consulting, and is currently a consultant for Greensboro's Future Fund. I hope that you'll enjoy her wise words as much as I have, but first, a word from our sponsor. This week's sponsor is Triad Local First, a nonprofit, membership-based organization in Greensboro, North Carolina with members throughout the Triad. Triad Local First members include independent, locally owned retail shops, real estate agents, insurance brokers, marketing and advertising firms, accountants, dentists, restaurants, farmers, breweries, and more. TLF's mission is a commitment to building a strong local economy and a vibrant, unique community. For more information on how to support local independent businesses throughout the year, visit www.triadlocalfirst.com. Jodee Ruppel, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Yeah, so can you tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what your work is?
Oh my goodness, loaded question.
I know.
Can that be a loaded question?
Yeah.
Jeez. So let me start with my work because I
Okay.
think that's easiest, right? I am the founding principal of 5x5 Consulting, which focuses on nonprofit strategy, community outreach, hashtag all the things that nonprofits need help with. And then I also, combined with my husband, we have a real estate business. So we do have 7 properties, which is 11 units in 2 different states that I actively manage and sometimes renovate, which there's a lot of stories there. So those are my focuses. And then just who I am as a person. A spirited, I would say enthusiastic, person that just loves life, loves people, loves digging in, and loves helping.
Yes.
So
that sounds like you.
So.
You are someone that is willing to just roll up your sleeves and your pant legs sometimes.
Yes.
And kind of dig right in, and that's something I've appreciated about you from the beginning.
Oh, thank you.
What I love about 5x5 is how you kind of go into nonprofits and become basically an employee.
Yeah.
And then within that employee role, it's like you wear 5 different hats.
Yep.
What is a nonprofit that you're working with right now that you are really excited to be working with?
Oh, girl. All right. I love Future Fund, right? So the Future Fund of Greensboro, it's an initiative of the Community Foundation of Greensboro. And I was a member, right? I moved here 3 years ago to this area. I needed to make friends, so I joined. And then they have brought me on as a consultant to revamp it this year. So what it is, it's a young professionals group. So think 45-ish and under, right? I'm getting older, so that number keeps rising for young professional, right? And you donate $150 towards the Future Fund endowment, and you get to be a part of giving away almost $45,000 to local nonprofits. It's incredible, right? I am not someone that has $45,000 to give. I'm not someone who has $1,000 to give right now, but I can do 150.
Yes.
And with all my nonprofit experience, spending the last 15 to 18 years in that space, I know 150 is great for a nonprofit. But if you can give them a grant of $20,000,
yes,
that's transformational.
It's huge.
It's
the difference between being able to hire someone and not being able to hire someone.
Absolutely it is. And so that's what we do. We take this money from our future funders, as we're called. It goes into the endowment, which is thankfully to the generosity of people in the city is now at about $1.3 million.
Wow.
And so that kicks off about $40,000 to $45,000 a year that we then reinvest.
Right.
And so
that's basically the income from the endowment.
Exactly.
Yes. Okay.
Exactly. And so the endowment continues to grow and we measure the market. So if the market's having a good year, we have a little bit more to give away. If the market's having a bad year, we may have a little less.
Right.
But at least we always have something.
Yes.
And so what I love about this, when I first joined, and this organization has been around for 20 years, which is crazy to think. In 1999, this city was thinking about how do we get young people invested, right? So cool. So it has grown, and we're giving away the money kind of behind closed doors. Nonprofits would apply, we'd read the applications, great, award money. We all felt good. But nobody knew we were doing it.
Right.
And there's all these amazing nonprofits, so we had to spread the word. So this year, get ready for this, we are doing nonprofit meet Shark Tank. Right?
Yeah.
So
everyone loves Shark Tank.
Right? It is everyone. Like, it doesn't matter your age. Like, it is a family show. You can watch it and get vested. And you're like, I need that sweet tea, or I need that lemonade, or that cake, I'm ordering it. So same thing. We want that same concept with this. So we have had applications last fall. We have 10 finalists right now that are nonprofits that we've chosen. They'll go through 4 coaching sessions. And then at a local theater, Triad Stage, they will give their 3-minute pitch. No PowerPoint, no props, just them and a microphone. And the audience gets to text a vote for the winner, who gets $20,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds really exciting.
Right?
It's like Shark Tank meets, what's the one where you sing?
Oh, like The Voice, or American Idol? Yeah. Because we have that voting, and there's other awards, right? The judges will have some judges there. So it is kind of like American Idol, and they pick, the second and third place. And then we're live streaming it, because not everyone can get to an event.
Right.
And so we will have a live vote, just like American Idol, and for 15 minutes, and that winner gets $1,500. So the community actually has a say of these 10 nonprofits who walk away with money.
Right. So, okay, the thing about Future Fund that's so interesting to me is it's really teaching young people the value of philanthropy. And, we may or may not have grown up as individuals in families and with backgrounds where philanthropy was shown or talked about. So what do you think is the most important thing for, people out of college to understand about philanthropy and their dollar?
So much. I think, especially with Future Fund, I think to know that your dollar has more value than just a dollar, right? So there's two things. Every dollar counts, and then that dollar is more impactful for those organizations than you think. When people start to get involved, and Future Fund is a great example of this, and I've seen this with our funders as they have come on board this year, right, to plan these things, they are getting so much more than $150 worth of value, right? They are giving more to nonprofits. They are making connections that I've seen it, led to jobs and consulting opportunities to them or new clients. But they are also finding their tribe. And when you find your tribe and your community, you want to make it better.
Right.
You can't, you love it, you're vested, you're doing those things. And so it has become very powerful in that.
Right.
And so those college students thinking, gosh, $150, that's a lot.
Right.
My challenge is going to be, is it? How often do you go to Starbucks? Could you cut back? Look at your Netflix subscription, right? I know I spend way too much on Hulu, right? And so if we find that over the course of the year, which is a little over $10 a month, and you could make a big impact with your nonprofits, with your philanthropic duties, but also find your tribe that continues to grow, and that's going to be personally fulfilling and lead you not only on your philanthropic journey, but also perhaps your career journey. And then at the end of the day, helping these local nonprofits especially is going to help your community, right? If we can help end homelessness here, if we can help fix the food desert problem that we have in East Greensboro, or the child hunger or food insecurity problem that so many of our families have in our community, gosh, that lifts everyone up, which is a more productive society, which leads to more productive workers, which means to more productive businesses that are flowing in the economy. And more businesses are going to want to come here because we are doing these great things for our citizens, and that's going to lead to more job opportunity and growth in the city.
Right.
So $1 is crazy impactful in the philanthropic world.
Yes. Exponential
is great.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I grew up in a household where, my parents are Catholic, and I always saw them put a closed envelope check into the passing the hat each Sunday, right? I have no idea how much they give. I really don't want to know, as a matter of fact. And they still do that. And so they might not have talked about what they were doing, but it was their way of giving back to their community that gave them so much. Or, we never had cable growing up, but anytime there was a PBS, drive on TV, my mom would be like, okay, we really like that Anne of Green Gables. We like that Sesame Street. Let's call and make sure that we're giving something this year. So it was seeing those things and understanding, we didn't have a conversation about how much they were giving, but I saw them give in those ways. And my mom always talked about how our dollar is a vote. So you are literally, with Future Fund, showing folks how their dollar is a vote. But I think that it's important to be reminded that no matter what you choose, be it Future Fund or something, that you can start your philanthropic journey now. We don't have to have thousands of dollars to make an impact.
Right.
It's the ability to, okay, can I save $5 this week for the next 3 to 6 months?
Right.
And what is that $5 a week? What's that going to turn into? And how am I going to choose to spend it within my community?
Right.
And I think that's such a beautiful part of what you're doing right now with Future Fund.
Well, thank you. I love that. And I want to stress that it's not only the money, right? We look at time, we look at talent, we look at resources. I actually grew up in a little bit different household. My parents were incredibly cheap.
Oh, no, my parents were really cheap too, except when it came to certain things.
Right? Isn't that interesting? Yeah. And so, you know, I often look back now that I'm in this philanthropic world so much, and look and see how it's transformed my life personally. I'm like, oh, my parents were so cheap. But then I look at my mom. Both my parents were teachers. We grew up on a farm in Indiana. And they really weren't. I remember Mom going around like my room, and she's like, all right, where are all your old coats and where are all your old shoes? And we would take them to her students who didn't have those things, right? They didn't have a winter coat in Indiana, and I'm giving my old hand-me-downs. So we learned in different ways to do that.
Yes.
I think as I got older, I don't think I realized that, right? It was in my subconscious. And now as I've seen it, as I've gotten older, and I've actually been more purposeful with where I give my dollar, and Future Fund is one of those, I am seeing the law of abundance come back. And I think I touched on that, like, yes, I joined Future Fund because I wanted friends, and I also felt it was impactful. I've gained friends. I've gained job opportunities, right? It's all coming back full circle. And I'm like, this is crazy.
Right.
This works.
So 2 things that I want to touch on that made me think of other stories when you were talking. So my parents also being very cheap, like just being home at Christmas time recently. My dad has been wearing the same pair of shoes for God knows how long. and I saw like the rubber soles like pulling away.
Yeah.
The dude pulled out a drill. I kid you not. Also, like, tailored the specific screw that he was using to drill, like, cut it in half so that it wouldn't go all the way through the shoe.
Sure.
And then drilled the sole of the foot in a shoe into, like, the bottom of the shoe so that he could make the life of that shoe last longer. It's like, it's interesting. They are cheap in some places.
Yeah.
So that they can be more generous in others.
Exactly.
And that's so fascinating to me. So I love the midwestern mindset, right?
Right? It is very much a mindset up there. There's a frugality, and I don't want to say scarcity because it's not exactly a scarcity mindset, but you know, when you grow up on a farm, the Target, the Lowe's was 65 miles away.
Right.
So
you're not just going to go quick get something.
Right. That was not an option. The Walmart was 35 miles away. So when you think of that, you had to be resourceful. I mean, I still remember the Sears catalog, and I'm not even that old just because our town is so small. So it's interesting what you learn, but you were always there. You were at every funeral, right, with a dish. A green bean casserole or something with cream of mushroom soup in it. Like, that's just how it is. And you are, you know, you're at church and you are giving back and you are volunteering. And if someone doesn't have a coat, you're looking in your closet to give it to them. And you never make anyone feel like you don't feel better than you are because you're doing that. It's just the way it is. And you don't make people feel less than because they don't have a coat. It's a wonderful place to go.
Yeah, and so Future Fund is like a way to embody those values.
Absolutely. It's those values, it's the giving back, and what I hope it sparks, right? This is just the start for Future Fund. We want to play in that space here in philanthropic giving and grant making, as it's called, of kind of those people who are doing it right, who are really solving the issues. And sometimes that's the big Goliath nonprofits, as I call them. And sometimes it's the one that's been around for 2 years that are boots on the ground. Because we just don't want to throw dollars at something that's not working. Because they have a big name. And we want it to work in this community. So we're hoping after this year, it will start to spark some people and say, gosh, you know what? I would love to help with this homeless crisis that we have all across the country, not just here, right? Everyone has these problems. So I am going to raise money to buy a truck that has washers and dryers and showers on it, and I'm going to drive it around town and let not only homeless but people who are housing burdened use some of those resources that may not have access to them. right? And then they're pitching next year to get that money to buy that truck. And we want to spark that social entrepreneurship, right? That social good. So we're hoping this is just a start. We're rewarding some great nonprofits that are, the 10 finalists are all over the map. Some big Goliath, some smaller. But we want to show that it's accessible, not only the giving part, but also I could start a nonprofit and make a huge difference.
Right.
Let's get creative about this.
Yes. That's so exciting.
Yeah.
Well, would you like an animal spirit card?
Oh my gosh. I love these. I know, in full disclosure, you've done this for me, and I remember I got so closed off. I'm like, I am not this. And then my friend was like, you kind of are. I'm like, dang it. So I can't wait.
And maybe that was just what an energy you were experiencing at that time.
Yes,
right?
for sure.
Or an energy that you were encountering at that time.
You're so sweet.
The interesting thing about animal spirit cards, I think, is that they're just a lens into wherever we are in that moment.
Right.
And that's what I find so fun about them.
Yeah.
So, if you could put your hands on the cards, take a couple big deep breaths. And then whenever you're ready, if you just cut the deck into 3 piles.
I'm so nervous. I feel like I hope it's something good, right?
It will be something great. Flip over whichever one you'd like. Ooh.
What is this?
Okay, this is an oyster. And this beautiful card that you have here is a creature of the water. And creatures of the water represent our emotional life. Our emotions, our feelings, our creativity, our flow, if you will.
Oh.
And ideally we have like this healthy stream of creativity and emotions flowing through our life. But it only really becomes a problem if we get too much water, which here in North Carolina we can relate to, right? We've had quite a bit of water in the past few months. But when water overflows, things spill, there can be tears. So, but the oyster is a really beautiful card, and I think you're going to like it. So let's see here.
I can't wait to hear this. I mean, it's one of my favorite foods, so I already feel
oysters.
Right. So good.
Little horseradish and
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Patient, secret keeper, hiding the inner treasures. The focus and determination of the oyster is unmatched. Anything an oyster personality puts their mind to, they achieve with grace and charm. The only problem is oyster types often take their inner gifts for granted. They become shy or doubtful, and this can lead to withdrawing or protecting their deepest desires and life's work. When the oyster card appears, it's important to reveal your inner treasures. What is it you've been hesitant to share? The world is waiting to see. When in balance, feels blessed, generous, and masterful. When out of balance, reluctant, griping, like clams up. To bring into balance, share something.
Oh.
How does this land?
So my mind's instantly, I'm like, okay, what's my secret that I need to share, right? I think that is right on, especially for this point in my life, right? I'm over a year into my consulting business and making the leap to go out on my own. And I'm getting, more confident in that. I mean, you're always confident, right? Like one of the things that you said kind of resonated, like you're hiding your talents. It's almost like the imposter syndrome that we talk a lot about, I think especially as women.
Yes.
And you are often like, gosh, am I good enough today? Is this, I gave a speech. Was it okay? Like you're always questioning yourself.
Right.
And it's so odd to me. And I know that on a thinking and a rational level.
Yeah.
But I still do it.
I know.
Right? And so
I can relate.
Right? And I wonder if there's some of that going on. I think I'm also, the focus and determination is right where I am in my business right now. We've got future fun. I've got a few other clients that I'm working with in some exciting projects.
Yeah.
And I just feel so blessed to be a part of those teams.
Right.
And then also on the flip side, I'm working my butt off right now.
Yeah.
But I love it. So, yeah, I think
that's a great, as an outsider looking in and having a basis of understanding of who you are, at least a little bit of your essence.
Yeah.
I think especially the focus and the determination of the oyster, it's like you do achieve what you set your mind to do.
Yes, sometimes you don't realize that until you look back.
Right.
And I'm trying to get better at saying, yes, thank you. Instead of like, oh no, I've been so lucky. I mean, there's been a lot of hard work along the way, and I'm trying to own that.
Mm-hmm.
But I also feel so blessed that everything I do is leading me to meet great people like you and everyone I've met in Future Fund and at HQ where I have my office and all these other groups that I'm in. Like every day I meet someone, I'm like, oh, this is a divine intervention,
yes.
right? And it leads me to something else, whether it's discovering something about myself, whether it's a potential business deal or it's an idea that sparks something. It's just,
so exciting.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Gosh.
Well, tell me, okay, your hands are in so many pots.
Yes.
As many of the people that I bring onto the podcast.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very common thread with the women that I somehow am attracted to.
Yeah.
So what's a project right now? What's one project that you're really excited to be working on?
Yeah. I am in love with the SheWolf Collaborative.
Can you say some more about that?
Yes, it is.
What is it? Say what is it? I'm not sure that everybody listening knows what it is.
Right. So SheWolf Women's Collaborative is a community for, can I say it?
You can say
for badass women.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurs, founders, CEOs. Right? So we love our women sisters who are out there in executive and director level positions at that organization, but we wanted to create a place for just founders, entrepreneurs, and CEOs to come together, because what we do is different. And we're carrying the burden ourselves, and we don't have a steady paycheck, and so there's a lot of things. And we are working with women who had their business started, right? There's other spaces out there for startups to kind of help you formulate your idea. But you've been going for a bit. You've probably got over 50,000 K in revenue. That doesn't always mean you're paying yourself 50,000 K,
right.
But you've got revenue coming in, and all the way up to over 5 million.
Right.
And so we have these members. We're bringing them onto this online platform first, where they are finding articles. They can talk to other members about what they're going through. There are resources, webinars to help with their business. How do you market? What's SEO? How do you use it more effectively? What's the latest happening with Facebook? And how should you market your business on that? Like all the business nitty-gritty things. But we're also challenging them to be like, okay, we know there's women. We as women often have things like imposter syndrome, or we don't like to talk about revenue. We'll be like, we're doing fine.
Right.
Are we? Because I want to make 6 figures, and then I want to make 7 figures.
Yeah. And I don't just want the business to make that. I want to make that.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so these conversations that seem to come naturally to men, or no one judges men for being like, I'm going to be a millionaire someday, but somehow for a woman you're like, oh well, that's greedy, or that's ambitious, or how's she going to do that with a family? And
I get really upset with women who are like, people get upset with me for charging, and I do want to help people, and but I want to pay my bills. I'm like, oh honey, it's okay for you to want more than to just pay your bills.
Right. Yeah.
It's just like you said, if you were a man, it wouldn't matter if you wanted to make some money.
Right.
How are we able to give to things like the Future Fund if we're not making a little dollar bills? Right. I mean,
right.
So SheWolf is a place where people can let their hair down.
Yes. And it's a safe space in this community. So, like, if we're having a day, right, because we have millionaires that are members of this community, right? Their business is making over $1 million. I don't necessarily want to assume that they're millionaires, but we can say, I felt like an imposter in this meeting. Like, we still have it, right? Or I go in there to check, and I'm like, I'm about ready to whip out this proposal, and it feels big for me, and I'm afraid they're going to say no. And you get the validation that you are worth right? You have all this talent. You have 18 years of experience in strategy and international and global strategy and all the stuff that you've done. You can charge this rate per hour.
Well, and they might not have the confidence in you to invest in you if you're not charging what you're worth.
Right.
Like, why is this proposal so much less than this guy's over here?
Right. Well, and it's also, we were having an interesting discussion in SheWolf this week, is that women also tend to handhold a little bit more than men in their businesses. So when we have a client, whatever, whether you're in branding or consulting, we give more. And you talked about earlier, like, it feels like I'm an employee of the business.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Because I believe in it and I invest and I do that extra hand-holding. Well, that should be worth more dollars.
Right. You need to charge more for that.
Right, because it's more of my time, whether it's my mental time or my physical time going into the office to meet everyone and make sure we're all working together depending on my project. And so there was a really interesting dialogue going on in the platform about, like, how do we explain that to people? Because they're like, oh, well, this male consultant just gave me this rate and you want to charge me more. Well, yeah, because we hold your hand every step of the way. Right. And you are going to love us and we're going to over-deliver.
Yes.
But how do we say that in a way that makes them get it? So it's those kind of conversations.
Yeah.
And then what I also love, right, because, you know, I was used to reporting to the CEO and I'd come in, you know, every week for my weekly check-in and, you know, she would get on me if I wasn't doing things, right? Or she would also challenge me to look ahead because she knew what was coming down the pike for the business. So as a consultant or on my own, I make sure my clients are happy, but I don't always pull up and be like, all right, what's next for the business?
Right.
Right? How do I need to be, what do I need to add to my website? What do I need to add for lead generation? Those kind of things. And so there's accountability calls each month within the platform, within your personal pack.
Right.
So if you're over $1 million in revenue, you're going to be your
with a pack of $1 million review.
Right.
Yes.
Because those are similar goals, right? You're hiring employees, you're firing employees, you're having HR issues. You know, 50,000 to 100,000 is probably just you.
Right.
You want to know some freelancers. How do you get over that hump? And so that's a very interesting space too, where you can get online and kind of have that face-to-face feedback and that accountability practice.
Yes.
So, and then as we grow it, right, we have preferred partners that will come into the platform. And so some may come in and offer 30-minute sessions to all our members, right? Some may be a lawyer saying, all right, let's hop on and look at your contracts. Bring me everything that you have. Let me do some review or let me teach a webinar.
Yeah.
So it's just all the things. And then we're growing offline. We have some people here in Greensboro, some people in Bozeman. We have a contingent out in LA that has come on. So you better believe there's going to be, you know, events out in those spaces where we can get together face to face.
Yeah.
Because it's also lonely.
It is so lonely. Nobody wants to be the lone wolf.
Right? Right? Very good. I see what you did there. The lone wolf, the SheWolf.
I love SheWolf. Such a great organization.
It is. Well, thank you. I'm so proud to be a part of it, right? It was not my brainchild. It was Jordan's brainchild, but I feel...
Jordan Lazinski.
Yeah, she is a force of nature.
She is.
And I remember last year, I didn't know Jordan that well, and every year I do my top 5 of who I want to spend my most time with.
Yeah.
And I put her on my list. I didn't even know her. And then I accosted her and I was like, hi, Jordan, my name's Jodee. Let's go to coffee, right? And she's like, okay, this is a weirdo. But I managed to break through and overcome from that rocky start. And she just has a good energy that pushes you to be a better version of yourself. She's one of those.
And she's one of the amazing things about Jordan is she's so real.
Yes.
Like, there's no bullshit with Jordan.
Right.
What you see is what you get.
Yeah.
She's not... Some business people are chameleons in that, you know, clients get one version and then there's the friend version.
Right.
Jordan, business, friends, what you see is what you get.
Right.
And it's real.
Yeah. And she calls out the hard questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the hard issues, and she tells you what she thinks. And sometimes, especially as women, especially me, I don't love conflict. I don't do that. Yeah. So I've learned a lot. It's pushed me in a lot of ways, and just being in the SheWolf community and having some of those conversations, it's just already helped my business. Absolutely. Right? Like, I'm approaching my proposals in a different way. I'm approaching my pitch in a different way. So it's fabulous.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad that you brought up that project because it's a really exciting one.
Yes.
Jodee, you have such a varied background. So, from Iowa, correct?
Indiana.
Indiana.
Also a corn-producing state.
Yep.
Yes, I
So, growing up on a farm and with FFA.
Yes.
And
shout out to the Blue Jackets.
Yes.
No one knows what that is.
Well, my family does.
Okay, all right, perfect.
My family does. And you were in leadership with the FFA, and you went around and you got to talk to other FFA regional organizations. And so it's like you were a motivational speaker from a very young age.
Yeah.
So if you could sit down that version of yourself, like if you could sit down and have coffee with the high school graduating Jodee or the college graduating Jodee, what advice would you have for her?
The one that's traveling the country giving those speeches?
Or whoever you think needs it the most.
So, oh my goodness, I have so much. This is my thing. It's so funny that that I did spend a year traveling the country and giving these motivational speeches with like talking points and now I'm like, I have all the things. I just need to sit with you for an hour and tell you all the things and prepare you. So I think looking back at, this high school and first year of college, like I was 21 traveling to 41 states in Japan by myself, right? Before there were cell phones, doing this and speaking to groups of up to 18,000, right? Like what an experience. Like that's crazy. I think I would say a couple of things. One, go back and enjoy the moment and capture it in a bigger way, right? Like I think I journaled some, but journal more. Capture your feelings as you meet these incredible people all over the United States. I mean, I remember being up in Maine and meeting a group that had grown, an FFA chapter that had grown a garden for people with disabilities. And so this was really before we were talking about like autism and blindness and the whole disability thing, right? Early 2000s. And like there was scents on these plants. So if you were blind, you could enjoy the garden because you could smell it and you could feel it because they use different textures and certain orders.
Yes.
And like thinking about people with autism or other things and how calming and the path. And I'm like, that's crazy, right? This is a group of high school students who are doing this research and making this happen.
And understood it.
Right, and understood it. A group in the Ozarks that was growing food for their community, right, in their high school. So all these amazing stories, like capturing that in a different way and remembering all of them. I also think when coming out, right, I did this experience before college, is two things. One, keep your connections that you made during this year. But two, enjoy college. Because I got to college as a 22-year-old freshman. And I was like, okay, time to work, right? Like I had a taste of kind of working life and going around. And I'm like, I just wanted to blow through college. Not blow through in a bad way, but like blow through quickly. Like I took a lot of classes. I graduated early. I wanted to get out in the working world because I just felt I was already there and I wanted a paycheck. And I think every adult listening to this is like, oh, if I could go back to college and not worry about adulting for a little bit, we would.
Yeah.
So I wish I would have taken some time to really, I say this, to party more.
Yeah. No, I
Right.
do too. That's
Right.
something I would tell myself. Be like, I know you feel like you have to be working so hard, but can you just enjoy it a little bit more?
Right.
Like there's a lot of college I don't remember because I
Yeah.
was working so hard.
Right. Right, and I look at people who have these best friends from college, and I have a few, but they also built this network.
Yes.
So coming back to this whole network, they're at these parties, and they're making friends who then go on to get positions in all these companies, and so then they've got this network.
I found out after the fact that that's what college was about.
Right.
It wasn't really about what I was learning.
Right, yeah, surprise. That food science degree that you've never used, not about that.
No, you were supposed to be making friends.
Right. My bad.
Relationships. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And so I wish I would have done a little bit more of that. And then I also wish I would have nurtured the relationships that I made in FFA. Like I met some amazing CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, other people, but I think I was so in a hurry to transform myself I was from a small farm in Indiana, and I didn't want to be defined by that. I wanted to get out.
Yeah.
I'm not the girl, I'm not like the Green Acres girl with a pitchfork. And FFA is so much more than that.
Right.
It is, for those of you who don't know it, there is a huge leadership component. It's the largest leadership organization in the country.
Yeah.
And so, but I just felt like the ideas were so conservative, and people had this stereotypical thought of agriculture, and I'm like, I'm not that. Like, I knew there was something in me deep down that I'm like, I need to be in different organizations.
Yes.
I need to be in a big city, and I lived in Brooklyn for 10 years, right? And so I was kind of like, don't put me into that agriculture box.
Right.
And so I let some of those relationships die, essentially. Like, I didn't keep in contact with some of those people. And then as I'm out looking for jobs, I'm like, oh, well, being able to email the CEO of John Deere probably would have been a good contact to keep, Jodee. Missed that boat. So just some of that, like, even if you think, like, don't burn bridges, right? There's a soundbite for you. Don't burn bridges. Like, even if you think that's the old version of yourself and you're evolving, it's funny now, after 10 years in Brooklyn and coming back to Greensboro, I find myself coming back to a lot of those lessons, whether it's leadership lessons or even some of the agricultural lessons now as we think about our food and our food systems in different ways, and even going back to Future Fund and food insecurities and community gardens. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have just come full circle.
Right.
So just keep in mind, like, don't burn bridges. Take your time to party and enjoy life, because it all leads you to where you need to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Given that you were a motivational speaker at such a young age, do you ever think back at some of the things that you were telling people and think, I still need to hear that?
Yes.
Well, can you give us an example of some of the things that you would tell
Yeah.
these huge groups of people that you were talking to?
Yeah.
That's a message that you still need to internalize today.
Yeah, I think this is a constant self-talk with me, is embrace who you are.
Yeah.
And own it.
Yeah.
So imagine me on stage, right, at, it was Louisville University, or no, the Expo Center in Louisville. And so there's 18,000 people in the audience. I have a giant peanut butter jar that has been made for this speech, right? This 45-minute speech that I'm giving. And this is like the send-off speech. So it is your crowning moment as an FFA officer. And I talked about how I had these quirks, right? And one of them was that I love peanut butter, right? Everybody loves peanut butter, but like, I would eat it out of the jar. It was always around, and people are like, that's weird. Like, you are consuming too much peanut butter. And so it was always a little awkward. And I talked about the time where I lived. I had 6 roommates, and they made fun of me, and then they put my peanut butter in the mousetrap, like use the jar, and like, we're trying to trick me. And I'm like, you know what? I need to embrace who I am, right? And that's a small example, right? But for this group of high school students, it was something that they could relate to. Like, don't be ashamed. Like, I love peanut butter.
Yeah.
I'm the first one. I love donuts now, right? Like, if you know me, I am super enthusiastic, right? And I need to learn to embrace that. Because when I go into corporations and I tone that down, I am not happy.
Right.
Right? And I'm not bringing my best version of myself, which means I'm not bringing my best work.
Yeah.
So it is a constant lesson that I said back then when I was 21 years old. Embrace who you are, own it, love it, run with it.
Right.
And that I still tell myself every day.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So
I love that.
That's
Thank you
my
for
favorite
sharing
one.
that.
Yeah.
I can relate to that on so many levels. I mean, when I worked at a big Fortune 500 company, that, I tamped down the hippie side of Alisha that I thought was too much for this suit wearing company. And they weren't even asking me to tamp that down.
Yes.
And so I wonder if I could have gone further, faster, had I just allowed my little, what I thought was craziness, to be more public, right?
Yeah.
Just be who I was instead of trying to hide who I was. Nobody would have cared.
Right.
And it eventually came out over those 10 years more and more. Yeah. I got more and more comfortable with who I was.
Right.
But where could I be now
if
I had done that from the beginning?
Yeah. It is such a lesson, and the earlier you learn it, and I think you always continue to reaffirm it, right? Because it's never like, oh, boom, I'm comfortable, done,
here
check.
we go.
Yeah, like now I'm in my groove. The earlier you can learn that lesson, I just think it puts you on a path to happiness, right? I don't know what path that you may take with your job. Like there could be a lot of bumps and bruises because you may quit something and you're not making much money, and like but it puts you on a path to happiness. And then that in turn, once you find that, just sparks big things and the right things for you, whatever those right things are. So,
okay, so back in the day, you'd hear people say, be authentic, be your most authentic self. And I think in that time, I would have the hardest time with that, understanding what they meant. I'm like, what do you mean by be authentic?
Yeah.
And I can remember I even tried to write blog posts about it back in the day and be like, what the hell do they mean, be authentic? Right. What is and now I have a much better understanding of what that means, right? It means like those quirky things that make you who you are, let them be. Yeah. And if you're somewhere where you feel like you have to hide them, maybe that's not the right place for you. Right. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. Yeah. So I wish that those speeches of the people declaring how important it was to be authentic could have articulated what it meant to be authentic. Don't just like say be authentic.
Right. Well, and to break it down, because when you go, we live in an environment where a lot of us have to work in big corporations or whatever the work culture is, and that doesn't always jive with who you are. And sometimes you have the ability to get out, sometimes you don't, right? You need that paycheck. So what are little ways that you can celebrate you? How can you find those groups, whether it's outside of work or whether it's a small group in work that really gets you so that you can feel nurtured and bring your best self, your authentic, I'm using air quotes, your authentic self, but who you really are, because that's when the ideas happen. And I think in working environments now are having this question, right? Everyone is like, oh, how do we keep millennials? How do we attract, right? Like that's the big buzz. Because they're such a large generation, so that they have to, and they have social media, so they have to listen to them. Because if millennials aren't happy,
they talk about it,
right? And they talk in a very public forum, known as the internet, right? So companies you see this with like PwC has now had relaxed dress code policies. They're scaling back. They're looking at like how do you bring your authentic self or all your quirks to work and embrace that. So, and you look at those tech companies, right, who usually are recruiting engineers that may have a certain maybe quirky in certain ways, and so now they've brought in video games and they brought in ping pong tables and they brought in all the things that they love. Like, how great is that? Yeah. So it's an interesting conversation that we're having on both ends, how work people or how work organizations can cater to allow people to be authentic but still get their results. Yeah.
And what types of cultures do those companies want to build? Like, do they want to be the type of company that caters to different types of personalities, or do they want to be? And I think it's interesting to think about it from both ends, like because I'm a business owner and I think about like what's the culture of the type of business that I want to have. And I don't think so much necessarily in terms of dress code, because I'm like, man, if I have to put a dress code out, then there's an issue. But also from the perspective of like, you don't want to be a company that just says diversity. You want to be a company that models diversity and inclusion, right? You don't, if I have to say it, that's an issue. Right. So how do I model that from an inside, from a company culture perspective? And who are the employees that I want to attract? Like, what are those authentic selves that I'm trying to attract? Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's an interesting dialogue going on. And then how, like, if you want to be an open culture, right? I feel like so many companies, the leadership, and I've been a part of one of these leadership teams, like, we want to have an open culture. We want people to say what they think is wrong. And then when you open up that can of worms, we're like, never mind. We don't want to be back in the can. We're like, we don't want to know that's wrong because we can't fix that, or we don't know how to fix it, or it's going to take too long to fix. So it's some interesting things that are going to go on over this next couple of years as we see the big shift in dynamics of companies.
Yeah, absolutely.
And hopefully for the better. And how amazing, can I just say, like, coming from a small town, I think and with no social media, like the time, because I'm almost 40, right? So I did not have social media in high school and college, thank goodness. But I didn't know there was other people like me, right? That had these different ideas, because I just knew my town, right? And the Walmart's 35 miles away, and right? So I didn't, the big city of Fort Wayne, Indiana is an hour and some away. And so when I got out and I was in Brooklyn and I was in, Raleigh and at college, and I started to see people of all different colors and all different backgrounds and ideals and ideology, it was amazing to me. And so I feel, gosh, for people growing up with social media now, and I'm not saying it is easier by any means, because I think it brings a lot, but like how great that you can go on and you can find a community and you're like, oh,
find your tribe.
Right? You find your tribe.
Tribe, I guess, is a complicated word. So find your community. Find that group of people that is common.
Yeah. So I just hope people use that in a way, especially in those small towns, until they can get out, or have their tribe and bring their tribe to the small town. I love a good small town. I love going back to my home and visiting.
All of the things that brings to the table. Yeah. Well, Jodee, thank you. For the last question, can you share with us, how do you live a life of abundance?
For me, that is seeing the value in everyone and everything. So I try to learn from everyone I meet. I talked a little about, I wish I would have captured the stories now, and having that realization, I'm trying to enact that in my daily life. So when I meet someone, what is their story, right? Such a good question. I think you turned me on to that question. What's your story? And getting to know them, and with that, I find the value in them, and then the value in things. And I don't mean like material things, but I see the value in the environment. I see the value in philanthropy. I see the value in just try to take the grace and the gratefulness from all the things around me. Yeah, that makes sense.
It makes total sense.
Combining them together. So if you can find value and you search for the value, it's always so fascinating to me what I learn, and I feel like I'm filled up, which is amazing.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being a part of the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I hope today's episode inspires you to get to know your entrepreneurial side a little better, whether you're a business owner or not. Get comfortable looking deeply at what's happening in your life and your business, and call things like you see them. And if you're loving the Yoke and Abundance Wise Women podcast, please head over to iTunes, fill in some stars for us, and let other people know what they can expect by writing us a review. It's an easy gesture that can have a major impact for a podcast. Thank you so much for being a part of the Yoke and Abundance community. Don't keep this podcast a secret. Please take 10 short seconds and share this podcast on social media or with a friend. Check out our website, yokeandabundance.com, to sign up for the online session of In the Company of Women, or schedule your free discovery call with me to bring clarity to what you most want and build the roadmap to get there. A huge thank you to our sponsor, Triad Local First, and my wonderful editor and producer, Ira Sterling at Julia Sound Recordings. Remember, every one of us has wisdom within. Keep sharing your words of wisdom, because you never know who you'll inspire.